things that are going to help increase the likelihood that you're going to get responses, tips to approach wholesale suppliers through email, because obviously I'm giving you all the wholesale suppliers and how to contact or how to contact them, how to reach them, like their emails, their websites, like you're getting all of that, right? So now it just becomes about reaching out. It's a numbers game. It becomes about reaching out, getting responses, getting their product catalog, and figuring out which products from them are profitable that you can obviously list, right? And we've also touched on like the suppliers that you should vet. So the first thing that you want to do with, regardless of whatever supplier is vet them, right? Are they even worth reaching out to? First of all, if they are, obviously, then we're going to go over some templates at the end of this. If not, I'm going to give you a template to reach out for them if you're unsure. And if obviously they don't fit that criteria, meaning maybe they're not dropship friendly, or they don't do order fulfillment, or they have minimum order quantities, then obviously you're just going to skip them, mark them off in the spreadsheet, or, write down which one you contacted and that they're not, dropship friendly, or they have minimum order quantities, and move on to the next one, right? There's literally, I've given you so many suppliers, and you can obviously go out and find other ones if you want, but you have access to tens of thousands of suppliers. So now it's a numbers game. Now there's no excuses. And now you have all the tools in your arsenal, especially after watching this video, right? And I'm going to show you after all of these tutorials, how to use software to split the product list down so you can find the profitable products super quickly on each supplier, right? So the first thing that's going to make you more, approachable, not more approachable, but that's going to increase the likelihood of getting a response, because it's going to increase the perceived professionalism of you and your company when you reach out, is simply a company logo at the top of your email header, right? And these are super easy to get. Like my company logo is literally just an upside down triangle. That's all it is. Okay. Also, if you really wanted to, you can design a company logo super easily, 100% free on canva.com. You don't really need any graphic design experience at all. You can play around with it and probably design a good looking company logo if you have some experience with Canva in like 5 minutes, right? If you have absolutely no experience with Canva, play around with it. You can probably come up with one in like 20 minutes to 30 minutes that you're proud of, right? Or if you don't really feel like doing that yourself and you just want to buy a company logo, that's something that I've done in the past. You can just go over to Fiverr, type in company logo, and buy a company logo for literally like $5 or $10, right? So this is something that's going to be, that's going to help increase the response rate of other wholesale suppliers when you reach out to them, because it's going to make you come off more professional, like you're a legitimate company, because you have a logo in your company header, okay? That's first and foremost, okay? Now, also a professional email will also increase the response rate, right? So an easy way to do that, if you don't already have a professional looking email with your own domain, like Bryan Guerra at invertmedia.com, or, info at bryanguerra.com. Like if you don't already own your domain, then what you want to do is you want to go over and you want to buy a domain. Okay. You can do this super cheaply on a number of different places. Namecheap. You can use Google domains. You can go to the one that I use specifically is GoDaddy.com. So you just go to GoDaddy, you type in a few different potential domain names. You don't even need a website. So we will cover, why potentially having a website will increase your response rate later on in this PowerPoint. But the thing here is like, you don't even actually need a website to have an actual email that you can obviously get, have responses and send emails from, right? All you need is the domain name, right? So if you went to GoDaddy.com, for example, and bought invertmedia.com, which obviously I own, so you couldn't. But if you bought invertmedia.com, then you wouldn't even need to set up an actual website that is invertmedia.com. You could just obviously then attach an email to that, which is an upgrade that they ask you for at checkout, right? So when you buy a domain name, let's say hypothetically, like, I don't know, let's say like Square Products. That's the first thing that came to my mind. That's terrible. But let's just go with that, right? Like, let's say you bought Square Products. That was going to be the name of your brand that you were doing wholesale dropshipping with. So Square Products, you buy squareproducts.com or squareproducts.net or something like that. Then at checkout, they're going to ask you, okay, do you want to attach an email to squareproducts.com? And then you just click yes. And then you can email everybody from GoDaddy.com using that actual, domain name and that email. So it's super easy to do. Again, it's you can buy a domain for like $7. Sometimes if you get like one that's like popular, it'll be like $15. If you get one that's like really popular, it can be super expensive, but like you don't need that. You can find a domain for $7 to, realistically $20, depending on whichever one you pick. And then set up an email again for like another $5 to $7 from there. And now you have a professional looking email that's going to increase your response rate for, maybe $20 to $25 total. So It's a no-brainer. You should look into that. It's not necessary, but it's going to increase your response rate and make you come off more professional. Because one thing we're going to talk about briefly in this lecture as well is like these companies get thousands of emails, if not, at least hundreds, right? If not thousands of emails. And so you want to do everything that you can to stand out and look more professional so that you kind of get through that initial gatekeeper and they kind of, see you as a potential company that they might want to work with, right? So examples of this, obviously, like Bryan at invertmedia.com comes off way more professional because it's an actual domain name than like Bryan Guerra at gmail.com, which anybody can sign up for free, right? Or obviously this goes without saying, but like if you have like one of those, I've seen people do this before. That's why I wanted to add it in here. When I used to teach wholesale, like buying wholesale in bulk and shipping it into Amazon FBA, I still teach it. But like when I used to teach it a lot, like one of the things that like people would do is they'd email suppliers from emails like this that they had when they were like 12 years old, or like it was like baseball fan 564 or something like that at gmail.com or at yahoo.com, and they'd wonder why the wholesale company wouldn't respond. It's like they're never going to take you seriously with an email like that, right? So those are two key things that you can do super easily, super quickly, super cheaply. That's going to help increase the response rate when you send an email to a wholesale supplier, right? A logo in your header, super cheap, super easy. I gave you plenty of examples of how you can do that. And again, a professional domain, a professional email. Now, another thing that you want to be aware of, this isn't something that you're necessarily going to touch on in the email, but that's map pricing. So map pricing is something that a lot of serious distributors and wholesale suppliers will have and also want you to be aware of. Because it makes you come off more professional, like you understand this, and also because they want to protect the brands that they're selling, right? So they'll set a minimum advertised price. So that's the abbreviation MAP, minimum advertised price, meaning that you're not allowed to sell that specific product any lower than that price, okay? So obviously you want to understand if they do have a MAP policy, you can find that clearly on their website super easily. But it's just something you want to be aware of in case they ask you if you're aware of their MAP prices, or if you know what MAP pricing is, or if they mention in their email that, you need to abide by MAP pricing, like then that's something that you can respond to because you're going to understand what it is, right? And then you can look at what their MAP policy is, their MAP pricing for that specific product or that, whatever it is. And then that's something that obviously you'll be able to respond to, because this is, again, something I wanted to touch on, because when I used to teach this a lot, when like buying in bulk and shipping it into wholesale, whereas obviously we're doing drop shipping and then, listing it, we don't actually, it's very similar, but slightly different. People used to all the time like not understand what MAP pricing is, and then they get tripped up in emails when suppliers would ask them about it. And so I just want to kind of cover what it is so you obviously understand, right? So generally you do want to keep their brand. They generally do this, suppliers and wholesale companies, to keep the brands that they sell happy, because they don't want to devalue the brand so that people are buying it and then reselling it and race to the bottom pricing. And then because like the perception of the customer is like, okay, like this brand is like a $20 brand, whereas realistically the brand wants to be known as like a $30 brand or a $40 brand, and they don't want to be like known as the cheap brand. So like that's a very simple and simplistic way to put it, but that's typically why it happens, right? They want to protect the brand authority. They want to protect the brand's name and the value of the products. So MAP differs obviously product to product. If you don't see a MAP price listed, assume that there is none. But just something to understand, like I said, that this potentially could be an issue that you would run into, or, often, if you don't see it, sometimes a brand will reach out to you, or someone will reach out to you through Amazon and be like, hey, the MAP pricing here, if you're selling it too low, is, hey, the MAP pricing here is 70, you have it listed at 65. Like, where are you getting this from? So in those cases, obviously you'll understand what MAP is. You can look into your supplier, figure out if that's actually true, and then raise your price back up to the MAP price, right? So this is just stuff to understand. You're typically not going to deal with any issues like this, but just wanted to kind of touch on it in case you do. Okay. And obviously just understanding this, if you do have a back and forth with the company through email, will show that you have experience buying wholesale, and that you understand why companies like them would want to keep their MAP pricing at certain price points to obviously keep the brands happy, right? And the brand necessarily, like they're not out there, the wholesale company isn't always out there policing this, but they have the policy in place so that the brand can sell to them and they can be the distributor, and they can trust that they're going to protect that brand's name, okay? So obviously, if you do see the MAP pricing, abide by it and follow it. Now, the next thing that you want to do is, and we've touched on this before, is obviously you want to look into or ask if they have any minimum order quantities. Again, not only because we're drop shipping, and that's crucial because it disqualifies any company that does, but also because, if you don't see a minimum advertised or a minimum order quantity advertised on their website, and you reach out to them asking about it, like that also kind of lets them know that you have experience in wholesale, right? Because somebody relatively new to wholesale isn't going to know about minimum order quantities, right? And obviously, just to recap, that's the lowest amount that you have to purchase to be able to buy from them, right? And like I said, this is going to differ from supplier to supplier, but like I said, any company that has any minimum order quantity over one is already disqualified. So just move on because it defeats the entire purpose of drop shipping, okay? Now, we're touching on a lot of things to remember here, like I said, so keep your emails as short and to the point as possible. People aren't going to read long emails. I can tell you that 1000%. So I know that we're touching on there's a lot of info that we're going to go over here, right? There's tons of stuff. But I'm going to give you email templates that are short, succinct, and to the point at the end. I just want you to understand these things, but understand also that you want to keep your emails short. Do not make them long or you'll never get a response, okay? Now, the biggest thing distributors want to see is that you're not basically a one-man show and that you can also bring value to them as a distribution chain to them as well, right? Now, even if you are a one-man show or a one-woman show, sitting on your computer in your office or down your basement or wherever it is, right? Doesn't matter. Even if you are, I'm not a one-man show anymore, but I actually wrote this lecture when I was. But even if you are, right, it doesn't matter. That's the point that I want to get across. But you don't want to advertise that to them, right? You want to come off professional, like you have a legitimate business set up, and you want to come off professional, like you bring a valuable distribution chain to them, and you want to come off like someone that's, you don't want to come off like someone that's just sitting in their parents' basement, even if that is what you're doing, and trying to buy their products to profit off them, right? Instead, that's why all these things are important, because you're subtly implying that, you are professional, you do know what you're doing, and then they won't even think twice or ask those types of questions in their mind, okay? Now, some crucial things that are going to give you immediate credibility, okay? We've already again touched on the importance of the business email and the business domain versus the personal one. That's a no-brainer, right? But another thing that we haven't touched on is a website, okay? So a lot of companies, not a lot, but some of them will ask if you have a website. And if you do have a website, that can also help increase your response rate. It can get you in the door of these companies and get you, accepted after you apply, because it's going to help increase the likelihood of them getting accepted because they'll take you more seriously. Now, if you don't have a website already, that's totally fine, but you should start thinking about creating one, even if it's a simple one that just has a few blog posts or a few products on it, and selling something similar to whatever it is that you're obviously reaching out for, right? So you can do this super easily. I'm not going to get into the nuances of building a website. Not only can you build a website for free if you really wanted to, you can build a free website on Wix, and then it just has the little Wix logo at the bottom, that pretty much nobody's going to see anyway. Or you can just buy a Shopify website or build a Shopify website and pay I think the lowest one's $19.99 a month. Or you can build a website on any of the free website builders and then pay for the upgrade, which is $10 on some of the websites. So there's so many different methods out there. If you're going to be doing this seriously, and if you're going to be reaching out to hundreds and thousands of wholesale suppliers, it might behoove you to invest that money to create a website so that you can be taken more seriously for the distributors that specifically ask for it when you're applying, okay? Again, if you don't want to do this, it's totally fine. Not having a website's not going to completely kill your likelihood of getting accepted to some of them or a lot of them even, and it's not going to kill your chances. But if you do want to increase, like I said, if you want to add all the tools to your metaphorical tool belt, then having a website can help increase the likelihood of response rate when you have that. Plus, you can add a domain to it, like I said, so you'll have or an email to the domain as well. So you have the professional credibility there as well. And on top of that, when a company asks you specifically if you have a website in an application, which you will see from time to time, that also, if you do put in a website there, often they don't even check the site, believe it or not, or they might just click on the site to make sure it's live, but they're not scanning through and actually vetting your site to see how legitimate you are. If you just have a website with a few things up, it's going to increase your chance of getting accepted for that, okay? Now, I wanted to cover that because that's something that a lot of people are worried about, but not having a website will obviously hurt your credibility and decrease your likelihood with those companies, but it's not the end of the world if you don't have one or you don't want to create one. Let's say hypothetically, like you download the list in the next lecture of 10,000 suppliers, if you don't have a website and some company wants your website URL or is going to, obviously not accept you because you don't have a site, that's totally fine. Like I said before, it's a numbers game. There's still 9,999 other companies that you can email and apply to. So it's not the end of the world, but I just wanted to cover it because it is something that a lot of people worry about, and it can be important to get accepted on some suppliers, okay? Not all, but some. Now, there are also 2.5 million third-party resellers on Amazon currently, okay? Now, obviously, all those are not selling wholesale, but you can still imagine just how many people there are that do email these distributors on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, all right? And that's why these simple little things that might be subtle that you might think aren't important are important, right? Because you want to increase the likelihood of getting a response from these companies. You want to be taken seriously. You want to stand out from all the other people that are emailing them. And these simple things are the easiest ways to do that, okay? Now, the big ones are probably getting lots of emails every day, right? And that's why it's crucial to be able to stand out, like I said, and appear credible, as well as you want to appear to have something of value to bring them and come off like you're going to be a valuable part and a valuable asset for their business as well, because you're going to be a valid sourcing chain or a valid distribution chain to your customers for them, okay? And again, all of this stuff is not stuff that you're saying. It's subtly implied by doing the things that we're covering in this lecture, okay? Now, another thing that I do want to kind of touch on is not necessarily sending the same email to every supplier. I'm going to give you email templates, and it's totally fine if you want to blast out email templates to get started. But once you start doing that and you start getting a few and you start adding a few products, you want to start adjusting. You want to start seeing what's working for you in these emails and what's getting you responses, and start coming up with your own templates, all right? Now, you can obviously create an email template and, send the meat and bones of that essentially to the majority of yours, but then you kind of want to personalize it a little bit each time so that you're not sending the same one to every supplier, okay? Because people can kind of like inherently they just get that feeling when they're getting like a blank template, rather than if you personalize it just a little bit. It doesn't take a little bit of time, maybe like 30 seconds to personalize a template and then kind of send it to them. I'm telling you, it seems subtle, but it's gonna make a difference, all right? Also, you don't want to blast out too many emails to too many suppliers at once, okay? Now, this is a big mistake that beginners make, because when you do that, you might be getting like, let's say hypothetically, you're hopping into this and you're like, all right, screw it. I'm going to blast out 1,000 emails today. I'm going to do 1,000 emails, and by that numbers game, I'm sure to get accepted to some, right? Like, that's logical. That's honestly how I would think to approach it. Like, if I was a beginner, like I would just do everything I possibly could, maybe like 1,000 in a week or something ridiculous, right? Whatever it is. But you don't want to do that, trust me, okay? Instead, you want to go for consistency. You want to aim, maybe it's 5 a day, maybe it's 10 a day, whatever it is, until you start getting accepted. And then you want to slow down, right? Because the worst thing that you could do is email and burn, because that's what you're doing. When you email these companies and they respond, and then you're not ready to kind of like hop on and go through their products, like you're burning them as a potential supplier. You're burning that bridge, because you're killing the relationship that you potentially have with whoever's responding from the email, right? So the worst thing that you could do is email a lot of companies, get too many responses, and then burn those bridges and waste those opportunities, because you're talking to too many companies and trying to source from too many at once, okay? Do a couple consistently, then the next day do a couple consistently, and that's the best way that you can obviously approach it. And it's easier to do that. It's easier to do a lot that way anyway, because consistency always wins over time. Whereas if you try to do too much, you're also going to burn yourself out in the beginning, right? So you might never get a response again if you do this to too many companies. I'm telling you, just go slow, go for consistency. You will build your store consistently over time. That's the best way to approach it. All right. So before we get into the email templates, I know this was a long one. Some key takeaways here are: it's a numbers game. It's totally fine. Don't get caught up if companies don't answer your emails. Don't get caught up if a product catalog doesn't yield you any results, okay? You have access to tens of thousands of suppliers, literally, okay? In the next lecture, I'm going to give you access to 10,000 suppliers that you can download for free, and you can contact all of them, okay? Also, I've given you inventory source. I've given you other lists of suppliers that you can obviously go through. You can also Google suppliers if you want to. There's many other ways to do it. Obviously you can reverse engineer your own supply, like your own retail products. There's a million ways to approach this, but the key here is you have access to tens of thousands of suppliers. So if you run into a tough one, or if you have trouble getting accepted, or if a company's products suck after you get accepted, that's totally fine. Move on to the next one. All right. The more wholesale products that you can obviously do and add to your inventory profitably that are good, the higher and more consistent your sales will be, not just this month, not just next month, but for the years to come. Okay. So build slow, build consistent, and it will pay off. I promise you. All right. So here's 2 email templates that you can send out. Now, obviously, the first email template is if you already know that they have no minimum order quantity and you already know that they're dropship friendly. In this case, you either want to apply on their website if there's an application process, or if you can't find that, then email them and reach out to figure out how. All right. Also, I'm going to give you email templates. You should personalize these a little bit. But also with different subjects, like in the email subject line, like the header, you want to test different things out, right? Like the simple ones typically work better for me, believe it or not. Like I wouldn't have expected that to be the case when I was first starting, but they do. Like just wholesale account or new account or even expanding supplier base work the best for me, right? But try different things. Try little things, little tweaks, right? You might increase the response rate simply by having a better subject line, okay? Here's the email template. Obviously, if you already know that they don't have any minimum order quantities and that they are dropship friendly, all right? I'm reaching out to you. Obviously, you put your company name in there. I'm reaching out to you from your company. We are an online retailer looking to expand our supplier base and are interested in setting up an account with, obviously, their company there, right? We have customers all over the United States, and we believe we can be a strong distribution channel for your products. That basically is communicating to them that you have experience, you have current customers, you know where you know where to sell their products. Obviously, you're not telling them it's going to be Amazon, you're not advertising that here specifically, but you're basically telling them that hey, you are going to be a valuable asset to their business because you can bring them sales. Okay. Can you please let me know what you would need for me to get started and kindly send me over an application? Best regards, your name. All right. So that's email template number 1. Again, you can blast this out if you want, but I would recommend personalizing it, or at least personalizing it, in the future at some point. Email template number 2 is obviously if you're not sure about minimum order quantities or if they're dropship friendly. Now, if you're already sure that they do have minimum order quantities or that they are not dropship friendly or they don't do order fulfillment, then that already disqualifies them and you shouldn't be reaching out to them anyway, right? So they're either going to fit email template 1 or email template 2. So again, same thing with the subject line. This one is the same, meat right here and potatoes. So I'm reaching out to you again from your company. We're an online retailer, blah, blah, blah. The only thing different is this second line here where it says, instead of asking for them to kindly send over an application, you simply say, I was unable to find any information on your minimum order quantity policy and whether your company offers order fulfillment. Would you mind directing me to where I could find that information? And here you're subtly basically saying okay, are you dropship friendly? And do you have minimum order quantities? But you're saying it professional and it's implied. It's not literally asking hey, do you allow drop shipping? That's never going to work. I see people recommending that, and it blows my mind that that's actually something that they actually reach out to companies with and think that it's going to work. Will it? Every once in a while, if you throw shit at a wall, something sticks for sure, but that's definitely not a successful way to approach it, right? These 2 sentences right here come off so much more professional. You're literally saying the same thing, but you're saying it with professionalism. Okay. So those are the 2 email templates, and that's basically all the information on tips for writing good emails to wholesalers. All right. Now, like I said, in the next lecture, I'm going to cover how to use the email spreadsheet or the 10,000 list of wholesale suppliers that you can get for free. So watch that lecture to figure out how to actually use it. And then we're going to hop into the software so that once you actually reach out to the suppliers and once you get the product catalogs from them, you can figure out which of their products are profitable so that you can then list them on Amazon.